Finally, I'm understanding data trees, and I'm getting farther into it. So I'm continuing with what script is I had before, and I put this little thing on here. Probably take it off turntable so we can do some things. There is rendered objects in here. We'll just put those into hiding for now, and I'll show you what I've done here. It's in render, so you're only seeing half the mode, which is fine. I'll show you basically what's happening here. And what I've done is I've gone in and even though I initially made a script, gridded lines through a Python node with a range going in, I then did it in a series of series. Well, what I did was cut and paste that and start it over down here. So what I've done is basically gone and made a series to a point coordinate, grafted it, did that again, and did that again. And what that ends up giving me is a really nice square grid of points. And that's what this is all informed by. We're not going to get into the sphere for a bit. So basically, you've got point system, points, points. Understand what you're doing. There's data there. And what I did was I decided this time I best go in and use as best as I can the path mapper and understand what's happening there. So if I take that path and I pull out lists of that list items of that path, you can see what I'm basically doing. I can't flip matrix because it's a complex data. It has an ABCD path, so I'm going to have to go in and swap the indices, with D and with C. I'm not going to bother swapping those with A and B. I'm just going to swap them with D and C twice. What I end up doing is building a point number, which I can gain access through list items, and I have a list item that either starts at the beginning. So if I so chose to start at 0 count, I could do that. I'd pair that with coming back from the end of the list at -1. Then I'd do 1 and -2. Then I'd do 3 and -3. Sorry, 2 and -3. Then I do 3 and -4. Then I do 4 and -5. And that's so I can swap these out and pair them so I can control some pretty decent geometries. Basically building lines, and that's all that's happening. And what happened when I'm building the lines is if you think about this, and I grab this data and this data. So if I grab both those data, you can see here, I'm going to have to leave this so you can see everything. If I grab those two paths, this section and this section, going back and forth, there and there, that the middle ones aren't going to make a line. So even though I have 9 lines here, only 6 lines are coming up. 6 lines are coming up, not 9. 6 lines are coming up, and 6 lines are coming up. And I'm basically getting different directions so I can build a pretty interesting grid like that. Those are my objects. Now, I do have to call out those middle items that have 0 length. And I figured since they had 0 length, they'd be giving a 0 piece of data. This is a little insight that I did, and I'm happy when I make discoveries like this. If they come up with 0, then it's going to count as a false on a pattern. Everything else is going to record as 1 because it's data. So I call them out, and I simply remove empty after I'm done by cleaning tree. Do that 3 times, and I'm left with 6, 6, and 6, which is 18. And actually, 2 of which are the same. This one and this one are the same. So I did this one, and this one. I actually didn't need this data here. Never end up going back to use that one. Anyway, I keep my scripts kind of like this. They're clunky, but they make sense to me visually. And then to make more sense of them visually, I obviously throw something in the variable pipes. So this is your, I then took also all the points, and I thought, well, I'd grab all the points and I'd just find an arithmetic mean of right in the middle of those. And that allows me to source them from there, move my geometries into my bounding box, and having a count on whatever I want to do. So if I slide this one down to 4, it's going to be 4 by 4 on my U count to a sphere, because I'm really just orienting around here. It's taking time to read it. It's a little upset at me because it had so many pieces. I didn't check the length of my script. So we got to hold back here a second. There you go. It's just putting on 4, 2 by 2. So the same thing, that count, it's not too slow a script. Let's do that another way. Let's take off this. Let's put it back on at 4 count and open it up again. Wait a couple of seconds for those to be oriented. And then I want to show you what you can actually do with this. So without going too far into the orientation and the pipe, let's just deal with the curves for now. Let's take this and shut this down. Sorry, didn't mean to turn my solver off. I meant to go into here and disable that. So basically, I can deal with just my cleaned up data. And so here's my data coming out. How can I change this pattern? How can I alter that? So as we look at that pattern and what's happening, let's look at it from all sides, which is nice. Go into standard, zoom extends all. You might have to zoom in and see a little more. But basically, it makes a nice pattern in all different ways. It's a pretty good 3-dimensional sketch, which very quickly can be piped, right? You can take all those forms and pipe them. So what happens when I change this data? Well, like I said, I could control the data by making it larger or smaller here. I definitely could change this data, which would make a lot more of the panels, which would congest my script. 4x4, 3x3, 2x2. I think 3x3 is a decent size for what's happening there. And this just changes the scale of the whole thing. So I've got it set at 24 as a step. And that step goes through all the series, so it stays square. You can change that up. That said, let's go back to what we had, all these items here. And what I can do is swap. What happens to that geometry on all angles, and I'll try and make sense of it. It's a little tricky here looking at in perspective. But if I take that data, Control-Shift, and pull that back into there, and then I decide, okay, I'll pull that data back into the beginning and end of the list, I get this geometry, which is totally different. So if I take an orientation of that, what's going to happen? And let's just go down to the opposite end of things. Or actually, let's grab right in the middle at 2, and let's go to -3, because that's how you count back and forward in the list. You get these other patterns, and they're kind of cool. And it's because I'm starting to control my data. I'm starting to understand what I'm swapping, what I'm doing. And I haven't done anything fancy by adding plus or minus. I don't know if minuses work, but plus, stepping up these counts and playing in the path mapper. But path mappers can allow you to work in multi-dimensions and not just 2 pieces of data. Like the way you flip back, matrix simply takes your param viewer, and even though you're looking at it, it'll tell you what's happening. It'll come up and you'll have a number here in indices, and you'll just have a single one over here, and it'll know you want to switch. If it has 2 here, it'll know you want to switch A or B with I. But when you get this much, you have to go to the path mapper to figure that out. And I'm starting to wrap my head around that. So let's just take that, pull up our final object, and go into Enable. And it's going to take a second to run, because it's going to take that geometry. It's going to try and pop that and also do a variable pipe, which slows it down a bit. But this is a beautiful script. I would suggest making one enough that you can understand and follow the data. It should be fine. I just haven't clicked on it. And nothing should be slowing us down. There it is. So you've got this very interesting shape that you've brought into all the spheres. And if you leave that sphere in there, which actually looks kind of decent with a shift, you'll see you get that nice little sphere in the middle, and then these weird tic-tac shapes all over the sides. And you've got a pretty decent form if you want to use it and orient those pieces. And it's also nice and transparent, so you can take that off. You could maybe leave that, just make these ones blue, and kind of have this view of what you've actually scripted. Now, you can do that on any surface. You can do that with any data. You can do that with any editing. What did I do? I actually went in and constructed all my planes, and then I didn't even divide surface. I just dealt with the data that was there. So I could go into here and play much farther into this aspect of the strip, my target. I could go in here and do the exact same thing by pulling data and make it a lot more complex. But I'm going to leave it at that because rendered mode, I like the half drawing. I like to pull up the visuals. I like that we've got to get half on, half off the bake. You see I've changed it, so now I have different ones that are overlapping. So I would probably at this point just take off my other ones, and I've got this wonderful circling form. I think I actually, very much like that crazy shape. It's rendered, and I made it. So very happy. Scripts will be shared online. I'm getting close to 100. This one's getting more and more complex, taking from samples and demos and then building my own very interesting scripts. This one down here is definitely the one I'm passionate about right now. Put it on color, throw the blue, and you know I'm always happy when I do that. And I guess what I'm playing with here is a little more than the branch item in the list, so I should probably specify that I'm actually getting into probably the most powerful tool here, in my opinion. Of course, remember you have to create null and put input in every time you do it. Let's grab that and add to group. Then let's grab one of these just for convenience sake, so you can actually see what's happening. We'll jump tool, and we'll grab that other jump tool and find out where those path mappers were. And down they go. And why I like this is so I don't have to scroll around like a fool. Right now I can just come in and say, okay, my path mappers were all located. First one was there, second one was there, so I'll just put it between the two. And now whenever I see that, I can double click it, zoom up, and say, oh, somewhere in there is my path mapper, and I should add that to the group as well. All right, so that's what I'm working with. That's the type of geometries I'm making. I hope you enjoy it. 10-minute rambling tutorial. It is endless. When you get into this level of control, your design and complexities and how you have to run it simple becomes very, very important. I'm not sure if it'll move fast with all that geometry. Hard to say. I do know that you have to spell turntable correctly to make it spin, but it's spinning fairly nicely. And I can set off the path of that and make it spin a little more. Very happy with the geometries I'm starting to create. All the best.